Spence, now that I've hit record,
Yeah,
I will at myself with that. I will, let's backtrack really quick for everybody. I think your hair looks amazing. I love it. I love your glasses. We have been friends for a while. We'll talk about events and shit in a minute, but tell everybody a little bit about yourself and art and science and how you got to this moment of glory.
sure. So I got into the digital business about 4 months after the original .com boom and bust.
There you go.
Yeah. So nobody was hiring. I had 2 job offers. I could go and design websites for Ford Motor Company for their agency here in Canada, or I could go work in an art gallery. And the art gallery was far more interesting to me than designing websites for Ford, truly. So I built them, a content management system. This is back in 2001, before WordPress and sort of all of the sort of standard suite of tools we have, and ended up with a roster of freelance clients, many of which were other agencies, because they divested themselves in that moment in time of like a lot of the talent that they had, that they were, selling big jobs on that weren't delivering a lot of return on investment. It was really early days of the internet, right?
Yeah.
And so I got to be a bit of an all-in-wonder, one-man shop to sort of be there. Like, you need a CD-ROM built? I can author that. You need a Flash website? I'll build that. You need an email template? I can do that. You need voiceover work? I'll totally do that too. I was just sort of really gung-ho and young and stupid, and ended up with more work than I could possibly handle. And so long and short of it, ended up with a small production studio for about 6-7 years. Our clients were big agency. And then around 2011, 2012, really out of the aftermath of the last financial crisis, the one in 2008, started to take a hard look. And I remind people that like plus or minus 12 months on 2008, so much stuff happened, right? In terms of our world, right?
It was crazy.
So January 2007, the first iPhone drops. Prior to that, we don't really have mobile web. September 2008, the financial crisis hits. That changes a whole lot of stuff, right? People are looking at budgets, where's money going, what's going on with consumer behavior, cord cutting, streaming services are becoming a big thing. February 2009, Twitter becomes a household name, and somewhere in there, Facebook opens up its API too. So a lot of the platforms that we take for granted as being ubiquitous and sort of ever present today really came out in a very short period in time, really 24 months. And so I was living through that, running a production studio, seeing big agency miss a lot of the sort of stuff, the writing on the wall. I was like, guys, you can't run this way anymore, right? A lot has shifted and you're just not picking up on it. And that really gave me the motivation and sort of inspiration to go direct to client. Art and Science was born, and sort of we've been on that track ever since.
What now with Art and Science, and I'm going to blow a little smoke here, so enjoy this.
Yeah.
You've never been like a digital agency to me, and everything that I know about you is so just, I think the science part, right? I think you talking about making that decision to go to the art gallery, so yeah, you've got that artistic bent, but you're also an experimenter. And that was always the fascinating thing to me. You were always going to play with different things, different ideas. You weren't just going to crank out a bunch of websites. You weren't just going to help people build products or connect things via APIs or whatever. So what is it inside of you that makes you keep tinkering like that?
So I have an art degree. I thought I wanted to be a painter. I was going to be an artist. And then I realized that I don't do poor well. I like to get paid. Like straight up, I just don't do poor. I'm sorry if that sounds offensive, but
no, dude, I got out of theater because I wanted to be able to make over $20,000 a year. And at the bad dinner show or the cruise ship, it wasn't going to happen. So I'm like, shit, I got to get out of here. I feel you, man.
Yeah. So that was sort of part of it. I think that because of the time that I came into digital generally, like there was a lot less to learn, but if you wanted to do anything cool, you had to do it yourself. So like the makery mindset, I think, has always been present within me as an individual. And then sort of the ability to sort of see how things go together and say, wouldn't it be interesting if? And so I think, combining, I also have a bit of a background in film. And so combining the idea of experience and cinematics with a sort of an empathic understanding of the human experience and like what would feel right. Like, I think for a long time, I realized that I was actually an experience designer, but it's before we used that moniker to
Right.
describe what experience design is today.
Yeah. And so much of what you've done and what I've seen, and just the way that you're saying it, right? That you're playing, you're innovating. You came in the early 2000s. That's when we came in as well. And we consider ourselves craftspeople,
Yep.
right? We wanted you to be able to eat off that code. We wanted to do new things and experiment and all of that. And I think that was what made that time so great, even though it was a Wild West.
Yeah.
It was like there was so much work and there were so many people not necessarily doing good work, but everybody could be busy. But those of us that were really trying to innovate, to do interesting things, I think we were the ones who just stayed energized.
Yeah.
Because we were always looking for something new. So
Sure.
I wanted, you said 2012 was when
Yeah.
you started Art and Science?
Yeah.
So, that's interesting. That's when the Bureau started too. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, that was when I got the email from the Gregs about getting together in Portland. So that was kind of a crazy thing. But if I'm not mistaken, your first event was in San Francisco, right?
Yeah.
Owner
Yeah,
Camp San Francisco.
2015, 2016, something like that.
Yeah. And we had, I don't know, 35 people in a hallway somewhere. It was like one of the worst rooms I think we've ever had. So it's just like we were so crammed together. And we were like, what did you say? That event was the event that sparked us to get the mics. So for everybody watching this, yeah, we can overcome shit, right? Like that wasn't the best. But what was that like for you? First of all, how did you find the Bureau? And what was it like to get in that room of other people who did what you did?
Yeah, so it was unbelievably cathartic. I will say that. So it came to me by way of somebody else here in Toronto I know who had been to one of the summits you guys had run sort of in the previous year. And she said they had these things called camps, and she was operating sort of independently as a freelancer. She's like, I think, Spence, it might be a really good thing for you. And when I found you guys online, you'd already closed out registration for San Francisco, but I sent you and Greg a note. I actually dug it out the other day in anticipation of this interview, right? Or I was like, hey, I'm kind of curious. And so you sent me a registration link and I filled out the form, and you guys got back to me like 48 hours later or less and said, like, Spence, we'd love to have you. And it was great. And I think in the moment, the problem, if I remember correctly, the problem I brought to that camp was that at the time we had about 20-ish heads,
right?
But I had literally sort of, I think we'd done like 100% turnover that year. Like it was one of those really difficult years where it was like, man, we just can't seem to keep anybody. And there's a lot of churn and this is just burning me out. And so I think a peer group that sort of was like, been there, done that, buddy, like it will be okay. And then two, the other aspect of it that I recall is I remember having some just really energizing conversations with people where we talked much bigger picture outside of the day-to-day about where does this industry, where do people like us and our skill set naturally trend towards? And it was, this general sense that like, we're heading straight into the territory of the management consultants who, because we see a landscape, we see what's coming in a way that so many people don't, I think, internalize and intuit. And in that moment, right, I think in particular, it was like, oh yeah. And then in the next 12 months, you started seeing management consulting groups like the Deloittes and KPMGs and EY start to gobble up digital shops left, right.
They were coming for us, man. They were coming for us.
Saw it. We totally saw it coming. And I think it justified and validated a lot of the value that we were bringing, day-to-day clients who were loving working with sort of independent and innovative shops like ours.
Yeah. And what I love about what you just shared is, like, I was joking about the way that room was and things, and that was like one of those venues, but you weren't the only one who sent one of those applications that came in after we closed. And it was just like, and that's part of why we had so many people, we had to switch rooms, and we had to do all this kind of stuff, was because the demand got really big. And it felt like love letters. It felt like people were saying, seriously, I need to get with y'all. I need to understand what's going on. I need help. I need these things. And so that was one of the amazing things to me, to get so many people who were in that place together. And also at that time, it's funny, it would have been interesting in 2003 or 2002 to get together after the boom like that. Can you imagine that camp? That would have been like one where people were going crazy, not unlike the pandemic, right? So, but I'm curious. So you go through, you meet people at this event, and then you go back to Toronto. Now, at the time, the Bureau we didn't really have Slack. We had a base camp. We had a couple other things,
Right.
but what did you take back with you? Like what changed when you made it back from San Francisco?
Oh my gosh. I think validation that we were on the right path, right? I think in a year where you have really tough years as an owner, you really start to question everything, right? The stuff like, am I on the right path? Is this what I should be doing?
Yeah.
And I think those two pieces of like, yep, it happens. You can slug it out. Don't worry about it. B, I suspect there were elements that I took out of that camp, more tactics to help make the day-to-day life of running an agency easier that I'm probably still using today. I just can't remember them. It's like, I've learned so many things that I've forgotten them. And then I think the third thing is really going back to that idea that like, there is a bigger picture that I'm operating within that has so much runway, right? That has so many more opportunities to come that we haven't even begun to really chip away at it. And I think for me in that moment, it was just really validating is probably the best word I can use. It was validating and really encouraging that the path we were on was the right one.
Yeah, that's it. I tell people all the time, it's confirmation, it's affirmation. Sometimes it's not that you learn so much that you just change everything. It's that you learn so much that you stay doing what you're doing and you have that faith that you're not that far off. Yep. Another thing about art and science, and this I think is also kind of the evolution of the Bureau. You kind of came in there when we were still kind of figuring it out and everything's going, but being able to do more. And, I've had the honor to meet Adam and Margaret and Kirk and other people that are at art and science. And, you are one of our lead members. You are one of those members that said, I want this for the company. So what has that experience been like when Margaret comes back from an operations camp or something of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, same thing. I think that one of the things that we've come to the realization of over the last few years is that so many of our senior leaders have come to the role because they've been really good at what they do. Mm-hmm. That doesn't necessarily mean that you know how to lead, that your, I think, natural imposter syndrome sort of inner voice and those things that needle your brain at 2 a.m. I think everybody needs support of a peer group that isn't, as we grow, necessarily found within the day-to-day, right? Kirk and I have been working together for 15 years. Wow. He was the first guy I hired in that production studio context that I referenced earlier. He has stayed with me the entire time. We speak far less today than when we were sitting back to back in the second bedroom of my condo, banging out Flash websites and taking way too many smoke
Apologize
breaks.
to nobody. Flash was amazing. Apologize to no one. It was glorious and we don't care. Okay, continue. I'm sorry. I'm under contract with Macromedia, who still exists to say.
And I think what I hear from them is that they really appreciate the sort of niche networks that they then get to become a part of, right? So Kirk connecting into a whole group of chief creatives and creative directors who are living through his pain, who are sharing some of this, challenges about like, what do you do with talent that is maybe raw, but needs to be developed, right? For Margaret, how do we take a bigger picture idea and notion of operations and apply it to a company that is growing, right? I think, 10 years ago, it was rare to find digital agencies that were operating above a certain scale. Today, it's a no-brainer, right? Yep. I had a chat with somebody out in Vancouver yesterday who, they're going to be 300 people by the end of November. Yep. Like, that's the kind of scale that we're talking about. And we have to borrow and learn from other people's experiences in this, because in as much as digital agencies are sort of unique entities, at the end of the day, we're still a business and we still have operations and we still have basic fundamentals to adhere to. Yeah. And I think that that's where, you talk about the Wild West, we could get away with a lot because we were smaller and we were these weird, innovative animals that apparently didn't need sleep and, could just crush it on a lot of Red Bull and maybe some other stuff.
A little vodka.
And a little vodka, exactly, right? And just keep going. But now it's like, I think, we have matured, right? So I'm in my mid 40s, right? I got into the business, really its early days.
Yeah.
We're now at a point,
right?
Yep. We have to provide some structure and scale, right? Like, I think that's that's really key to how not only the category has matured, but also how we, right, as a collective and a network and a support group with each other have also matured.
Yeah, and with what you're saying, it's like when you look at that early 2000s, like a lot of even people in the bureau, they had their shops in the early 90s, right? Before the internet was even open to the public, like they were still doing stuff. Hell, I think Nancy Lyons had a bulletin board, right? So like, I'm not joking. I'm pretty sure she started with a bulletin board.
Awesome.
And it's, yeah, I don't know if it was called Clockwork, but I think she points to that as the origin story for Clockwork, right? So, but when you start looking at it and us just figuring it out at craftspeople, none of us went to school for business, all that sort of thing. Then in 2012, you start to see new shops show up who were people that were business majors.
Yeah.
Right. And they start to talk about net promoter score, and they start to talk about these other things. And we're just like, that sounds gross. But you know, we say that sounds gross because we're deflecting everything.
Yep.
We don't even want to look at it. But now you find that we're suddenly looking at account managers and we're like, well, maybe we do want to keep clients around. Maybe we do want to run a business. And I think you're right. That is part of the maturity that we're all experiencing. So now that we get to that part, I'm just curious, what is like the next phase for art and science? Like when you start to look at this.
You know, what's really funny is that I think today we still have our digital first origins, no question, right? Like we are digital first through and through, but we are looking and being engaged in assignments that aren't exclusively digital.
Okay.
So we're starting to do more, top of the mountain sort of work, like core strategy, brand strategy. Nice. Trying to figure out digital transformation for large clients that recognize there's a lot that they have to do. And I think the pandemic, much like 2008, accelerated the role of digital in everyday society. The pandemic has done that, of course, in spades as well. And so what the last 18 to 20 months of sort of chaos and uncertainty has wrought for us is an enormous amount of opportunity, wherein nobody who's going through a transformation today discounts the role of digital. And so if you're going to, be successful in this transformation, you need people who I think come with an innate sense of the possibility of what the digital channels afford, but who have a certain maturity and business acumen to be able to say, okay, from a pattern recognition standpoint, here's what's going on. But I think most of us in the digital space also are natural foresighters. We're also naturally looking at what's coming next. And so I think that as a particular skill set in lockup right now is being very highly valued. And so I think you combine that with then the art and science brand story of combining the creative inspiration of the artist with the analytic rigor of the scientist. That's sort of how we pitch. And it becomes this really attractive value proposition to engage us on a whole number of dimensions. And so we're starting to look a lot more like a traditional agency did, 15 years ago, but with a highly I think mature digital offering, fundamentally is sort of how I would describe it.
I'd throw the word sophisticated in there, right?
You said it.
I said it. You didn't say it. I said it. You sent me an email. I read what you said. Anyway, but what's funny about what you're just saying, just like clicked for me. When we first started, everybody thought we were like going to replace the yellow pages. This is an evolution of the yellow pages. Like this is what's happening right now. Isn't that exciting? And now it's an evolution of your business model, right? And so, that place that we get to sit at is totally different because we understand how everything gets applied, and we've already made 1,000 mistakes. So we can come in there and make that just rock. So I want to play a little game real quick. I'm going off script here. I'm going rogue, and not in the bad way that we hear about all the time in the States. Okay. So I want to play a game. I got a blank piece of paper here. You have been to several camps, including operations camp. You've been to the Summit in San Diego, and you've been to a forecasting workshop in New York.
Yeah.
I am going to write down what I think your favorite event was. Okay. Ooh. And then you're going to tell me, and then I'm going to show what I wrote down. Okay. I've written it down. All right. Of all the events you went to, Spence, what was your favorite?
Oh, God. I'm going to go with Colorado.
See, lazy you folks.
Yes!
Called it.
Yes.
Sitting around that campfire.
That's it,
After
baby.
that amazing, shot ski, whatever, ski shot. I don't know what that was. We were told not to talk about that. We signed papers. That was, to me, I think, the time, as many times as we had met before, I think that was also the time I got to know you the best. Like, we were just so relaxed. Everything was so great. The venue was great. And I think that's a big part of this, right?
Yeah.
It's getting us out of where we normally are so that our brains can experience new things and open up, and we kind of break those barriers that we've built up for ourselves. I mean, that to me is a big part of what happens when we all get together. And that we're going back, we're going back this May.
Are you?
Yeah, for design leaders. So it's like, somebody said, Carl, how do you pick the places? And I'm like, generally, I just want to go somewhere and I say, hey, that's where we're going. And then if I really like it, we go again. So, well, Spence, before we take off, one parting question. If let's say the internet never existed, let's say that none of this ever happened, what do you think you'd be doing right now? Like, if you had to find another path forward that didn't involve art and science?
I think I might be a poor painter.
Yeah.
In truth, I probably would be an academic. I would be, teaching somewhere in a creative thinking or integrated thinking context. I love art. I still like the idea of making art, not that I've got a ton of time for it. I think I'm probably better thinking about it than I am an artist these days. And so I think academia is probably where I'd love to be, because I also love sort of seeing raw talent get developed into something and sort of elevate, people's thinking. So that's probably it. I'd probably be in academia.
I could see you being that kind of cool hipster professor who's also doing the art stuff. I think you'd be doing them both. I don't think it would be one or the other. So, well, brother, thank you so much for helping us out, for being a part of this member spotlight. And
my pleasure.
I love you. I hope I get to see you soon.
For sure. As long as the US will count my mixed dose vaccination schedule as being allowed to cross the border, I think.
You have to realize I'm from Florida, so we still have not recognized that there is a problem. I'm pretty sure if you just jump all the way over to Florida, where the freedom virus has not existed,
we're good. Yeah.
You're gonna be fine, my friend.
Nobody would say boo.
Nobody would say a damn thing. All right, my brother, to you.
To you, sir. Thank you for everything,
Spence.
Carl. Thank you for everything you've enabled for us in the entire community for the last 7-8 years.
You got it. And we're going to keep rolling until people stop taking my calls. I'm going to keep doing this.
Awesome, man. Enjoy the rest of the week.
I will do it. Thanks, Spence. And thanks everybody for watching.